swung the fake sword around and pointed its tip at Jeremy's neck. "Jeremy, has anyone ever told you not to piss off a girl with a weapon? It might be plastic, but I could still make it hurt." Jeremy swallowed, and his Adam's apple bobbed against the sword point. "Okay!" Liv moved to jump between the two. "I think that's a wrap on tonight." She gently put a hand on Shannon's arm, guiding the sword away from Jeremy's neck. Tall Tony finally looked up from his camera lens, oblivious. "Did you get what you needed, Liv?" Liv thought over the last few hours of work they'd put in. She'd shot the climactic fight scene 3 times, but none of them had felt right. "No, we'll have to do it again tomorrow night." "I have soccer practice tomorrow night," Jeremy said. "And I have a date," Shannon added. When Liv shot her a meaningful look, Shannon gave her one right back. "This is important, Shan. Trust me, so is my date." Jeremy snorted and turned to Liv. "You know, if you just use the available studio space to film this short like everyone else in class, we could work during the day." Liv put 2 fingers up to her temples and rubbed a circle. When she'd first taken on this project as part of her summer film program and asked her fellow classmates and her best friend Shannon to help out, she'd known it would be a difficult endeavor, but she hadn't known it would be this hard, that every little step would be like trying to walk with 50-pound weights attached to each foot. The worst part was that Jeremy was right. Setting up her shots in the basement studio at her summer program's office would be much easier, even if the end result wouldn't be as good. Liv had chosen instead to film her night scene outside, in a place she'd always loved. She glanced around at the familiar landmarks. Just beyond where Shannon and Jeremy stood was a concrete ledge that dropped 10 feet down into the mostly empty LA riverbed. The ground at her feet was cracked, with small shoots of green leaves working their way up from the dirt underneath. To her right was a packed stone wall, covered with graffiti. The wall led to a small, unimpressive cement bridge that arched over the thin river. At a glance, the place didn't look like much, aside from slightly resembling the drag race scene setting in Greece. But beyond the bridge was a breathtaking view of downtown Los Angeles, the black outlines of its buildings dark against the night sky of early June. In place of stars, the brightly lit windows of downtown LA shone for miles. Streetlights from the top of the bridge cast orangey reflections over the river water. The spot where Liv stood was nowhere of significance, really. Tourists didn't come by on buses, joggers stayed away. But to Liv, the place had always felt important. It felt somehow like a secret that was hers alone. And she'd always wanted to capture it on film. She'd gotten special permission from her student advisor to take the equipment out of the studio. So long as she'd fronted an additional deposit, she just hoped it would be worth it. Liv squared her shoulders and reached down to pick up the boxy floor light at her feet. "Okay, how about we meet here again on Wednesday night? I'll bring more shirts." Shannon shrugged with one shoulder. "Fine," Jeremy said. "But we can't go too late. Some of us have actual curfews and homes to get back to, you know." Liv did her best to ignore the dig, even though it hit below the belt. It was true. She didn't have someone sitting at home watching the clock to make sure she walked through the door on time, or at all. It sucked more often than not, but Liv knew better than to let Jeremy see how much his comment bothered her. For one, she knew he didn't really mean it, and was probably still just pissed that Shannon had got the best of him, which, to be fair, happened a lot. And second, getting emotional would make it all the harder to regain some measure of control over the shoot. On set, even if that set was just 4 teenagers playing with fake swords and cameras on a stretch of cracked cement, was typically one of the few places Liv felt like she was able to maintain any control at all. So she resolved to let Jeremy's comments slide. Shannon, however, had different priorities.